Hello again, everybody. It's good to be back with you. My podcast is called It's Good to Talk. My name is John D. Healy. I do a lot of podcasting. I always have interesting people on, and today is no exception. I got into podcasting because I produced a book. My good friend from all the way from Dowra in County Leitrim, all his life stories up until a few years back. I always give a shout out to Liffey Moving Company here in New York City. They're my sponsor, and they've been going around longer than the New York City Marathon. They're running very smoothly, and they do long distance, short distance, and they're well established. You can't buy experience, and I'll be talking to a man shortly about that. And I also give a shout out to the Irish Examiner USA, Paddy McCarthy, great newspaper here in New York City, for all the events, local arts, music, and all that. And he does cross the pond to get involved in some of the local stuff that's going on all over the country. But I want to get right to my guest today. He's a county councillor. His name is Gino O'Boyle. He's from Sligo. And I did have people on here from Sligo before. Remember when I had a guy on living on a boat? I want to talk to Gino about that. Gino, you're very welcome to my podcast and to my listeners here in New York City.
John, thanks very much for having me, and delighted to be on it. And a big hello to your listeners as well.
Thank you. Now tell me, how did you get into politics? Did you just had a dream and you woke up and said, I'd like to be a politician?
No, my dad was actually a county councillor before me.
Okay.
He was part of the water movement protests here in Sligo. Ireland, they tried to bring in, they tried to privatise the water system here, basically putting in water meters outside people's houses, people's doors. Him and another few like-minded individuals got together, and in fairness, there was thousands out in the street in Sligo.
Sure.
And around the country, but he passed away suddenly, so I got co-opted onto the seat in 2015.
Okay.
I ran then in the local elections myself 2019, and I was successful. I retained the seat, but also early this month the local elections were on again, and I retained the seat again, so I'm happy enough now. I like to think the O'Boyle name now is established, and I'd also like to think of my late father at a time like this.
I was going to actually commend your father a lot for doing that, because I was born in Mayo, lots of water. I lived in Kildare, Roscommon and Cork, and water rates above any issue. A country that's surrounded by water, number one. Number two, you have probably rainfall every half of the year plus more. And water should be basically free, like fresh air. Like, what are they going to fucking tax next? Fresh air?
You wouldn't be surprised with this current government we have. But our water rates was paid through our motor tax as well, actually. And there was hundreds of millions that was supposed to be invested in the water infrastructure that actually had never happened. A lot of the times now you'd hear Irish Water saying, oh, well, you're losing 40 or 50% of the water through leaks in old pipes. But this is the problem with the money that was invested. You'd like to know where that money went, because obviously it wasn't into the infrastructure that's needed.
Well, as we say here in New York, don't get me started. But when we joined the EU back, it was Jack Lynch, I think, that brought us into the EU, and I'm very proud that we joined the EU. But a lot of the politicians in Dublin, in particular D4, they hadn't a clue about the fishing rights. So we got a good deal for agriculture and everything else from Europe, but the fishing rights was sold away for nothing. And basically a Spanish trawler could come within 3 miles of Sligo and fish away on a factory ship, as they were called, or Mayo, or Galway, or Donegal, or Killybegs, and yet our fishing right was taken away. And one more while I'm revved up. The M50 toll booth in Dublin, it's a busy toll booth, and it's a money maker. And some other idiot politician sold it to France. So France is collecting the money from every car that passes through the M50 toll booth. Explain that to me.
Well, unfortunately, we're trying to Americanise our system, which is privatise everything. With the fishing rights, it was something I had raised actually last month at the council meeting. You've just said that perfectly. When a Spanish trawler can come in, or one of the factory boats can come in and take as much fish as they want, yet Irish trawlers can only take a certain percentage and have to either dump it back or just get rid of it, dispose of it. And then with the M50, it's something that I don't understand how people let that slide. You know, it's a public road, it's a public infrastructure, it should remain public, but instead we have privatised everything. It's like our healthcare system now. Just this morning on the local news, after shutting down the chronic pain unit in Sligo, it's not even a general, it's Sligo University Hospital now. Obviously, as a man from Mayo, you remember that the Sligo General Hospital used to be here.
Yes,
They're downgrading the services every couple of years, but now with the chronic pain unit gone, What I believe is that they're trying to just, again, Americanise the healthcare system, where you'll have different counties. Galway would have a fair share of services, maybe Athlone, Dublin, and maybe Cork. But everything else is just kept on them lines, and it'll be soon enough where they're the only places you'll be allowed to go to.
I totally understand that, and I've been to Sligo many times, and indeed I've been to that hospital to visit elderly friends there that were in hospital, and it's a great hospital, it's a great facility. You wonder what's wrong with the health system in Ireland in general. Why they can't? Why are there people waiting for operations? Why can't you educate, employ more nurses and doctors?
Well, I think
what's wrong with the system?
The system is they're investing heavily. I would think close to maybe 20 billion a year into the healthcare system. But the problem is they're not paying people right. A lot of the staff are underpaid and overworked, and yet you see our doctors and nurses going abroad because they'll get better pay deals. Here is a thing that we want to overwork everybody and not pay anybody. But that goes through the whole hospital system. When you go in yourself, you could be just in waiting on A&E, it could be an arm break, it could be something more severe, but you could be there 17 to 24 hours before you get seen to. And it's not due to the staff that are there. The staff in the hospital are excellent. They always have been. I was in recently myself, but it's just the lack of staff.
Okay, the lack of staff. Well, staff very important. I mean, I had my restaurant, Mother Hubbard's in County Kildare, and staff were important to me. I paid them well, I treated them well, we worked with the team, and we were there. And needless to say, you were at Sligo County Council, I had to deal with Kildare County Council, and indeed I moved again to Roscommon and Roscommon County Council. I have a very ambivalent feeling with Kildare County Council. I mean, those fuckers, because I was left between the middle of County Meath and Westmeath on the pivotal point of Kildare. They didn't give a rat's arse about any issues I had. Indeed, waiting for planning permission took forever. And then an architect engineer came to me. He said, if you put a little bit of money into a brown envelope, I might be able to speed things up. I said, why didn't you tell me that 3 years ago, if that speeds up the process? And I would have gladly put the 3,000 or 4,000 into the envelope. And I did. And then it happened. I said, is that all it takes to fix the fucking system? Money? Why didn't you? And then I go to Roscommon and I'm waiting for planning permission for a wind turbine. And every motherfucker, excuse my language here, New York language, in the Roscommon County Council voted against it every time, except for one independent guy. I think his name was Finnegan or Mike Finnegan. And eventually I got planning permission for a wind turbine, right? Which was kind of ahead of my time. And by the time I got it, I said, fuck ye, I'm out of here. I sold the place. And the people that bought it went back into Roscommon County Council and they said, we don't want a wind turbine. We'd like to get planning permission for a 4-bedroom house. And Roscommon County Council were so happy to get rid of me, they gave the planning permission for the 4-bedroom house. That's some Ireland, my ass, okay? Gino, tell me more about Sligo.
Fortunately, that's the problem in many counties, where it's a case they know. I'm on the council now. In 9 years, I haven't seen a case that if you got a brown envelope, it could make things move along quicker. I'm not saying it didn't happen in the past. I'd like to think that we've moved on, hopefully in Sligo anyway, from dodgy dealings, because I think that's what is the country in the way it is. You've seen the Celtic Tiger here, which has led us to austerity measures beyond belief. And again, I believe something like that is going to come back with the cost of living crisis we have. We have house prices spiraling out of control. So it's going to be a case that, if you remember back when the austerity measures came in, it was always the most vulnerable to get hit. People who needed medical cards lost their medical cards. It was people. I remember going to a door with my dad, or canvassing for my dad, and there was an elderly woman who needed 2 oxygen tanks a week to help her survive. The government cut one of them. So you tell me how somebody is supposed to survive in that. No more than a couple of years ago, the cold weather we got, Leo Varadkar says he's not going to open the checkbooks to heat older people, but yet we'll give hundreds of millions of tax breaks to the likes of a Dennis O'Brien or that,
Well, Leo,
we have the right people sometimes in the country, but the problem is they're in the wrong positions. And the lack of political will around the country, and in kind of some of these towns would have a Fianna Fáil or Fine Gael councillor or a so-called independent, which there aren't too many of them that are real independents, that are steeped in history of Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael, and it's hard to change people's mindsets. Now, you just go around the doors canvassing, well, my dad would have voted for Fianna Fáil or my mother would have voted for Fine Gael. We'd like to keep it that way. It's sometimes, and I'm hoping in the near future, where the younger generation come through and see what they're after doing the last 100 years, and hopefully at some stage in the next general election or the one after that, things might change, because the problem here is the amount of resources that are underfunded.
Yes.
You know, like, we're lucky enough in a small county to have
that is correct, indeed. And then you see the amount of waste of money as well that happens.
Yeah.
And there was one of those guys there you mentioned in the Dublin back when the shit really hit the fan, and he got into a bit of trouble for all his swindling. I'm not talking about Charles J. Hoy, but some other guy.
No.
And he more or less said that the guys with big balls have no money, and the guys with no balls have money. And it came down to the money. And like going back again to Ted Nealon from Sligo as well.
Well, his son has just after been elected, by the way.
Who's that?
His son has just after been elected to Sligo County Council.
Well, I'm very proud to hear that good news. Ted Nealon was a good man. But he was a broadcaster with RTE. And when Sean Doherty lost the election to be a TD in Dáil Éireann, Ted Nealon called him up on the phone for a broadcast similar to what we're doing, Gino. And he said to Sean Doherty, he said, "Called the Horla, what happened?" And Sean very smoothly said, "Not enough people voted for me, And simple as that. And that's what it was. But one thing about Sean Doherty, good connections with Sean Doherty family too, was, when he got older and more, he found God, I guess. And then he got concerned about meeting his maker. And then he spilt the beans on Charles J. Hoy. And that was the start, slow decline of the Hoy era and the tapes and what happened behind the scenes. And that was revealed in Roscommon by Shea Healy, broadcaster, just in relation to my own, on Night Hawks was the name of the radio television program. So when Doherty said, "I better tell the truth."
Well, I believe there's not enough people telling the truth in government policy or government altogether. And that's where the difference lies between people. We went around canvassing. We had a great canvass. We had 37 days we were out there, evening and some nights, and the response was very good. But we always find that as you're on the left, you have to work for every vote you get, whether it's a second, third, or the fourth. But if you're running under Fianna Fáil or Fine Gael, who have staunch voters, you could market a pig to go run in the next election, and it would get elected. Do you know?
Yes.
And I believe there's unfortunately zero accountability for any of these. Like, we have a housing crisis here. If you have a Fianna Fáil or Fine Gael TD going to a door, it'd more or less be ended up welcomed in, pat on the back, well done.
Yeah.
But yet their daughters or their sons or grandchildren are heading away abroad to work because they can't get a job here and they can't buy a house here. Like, the average house price in Sligo was up at nearly close to 290,000 for a 3-bed semi-detached.
Right.
Like, for 4 walls and a few windows.
Yeah.
These same houses were going 10, 15 years ago for 60,000, which were the fixer-upper house.
I totally agree with you, and I like the fixer-upper idea because I'm a bit of a jack of all trades here myself.
Yeah.
But going back to, as Christy Moore, one of my favourite folk singers in Ireland, says, the people in the graveyard always vote the same, don't they?
Well, that happens, actually. It happened in the last election.
I'm sure it did.
There was a few dead people who voted, but also a lot of people with physical disabilities that ended up actually playing in New York in a Gaelic match that ended up voting with a physical disability. That happens all across the board, I'm assuming, not just here in Ireland, but well across the water as well. No, here, just in Sligo, we have 4,000 vacant homes that are either derelict or just been lying there. And then we have about 2,000 holiday homes. Now, on the housing list in Sligo alone, there's about 1,500 to 1,600 open applications, which could have anywhere from 3,000 people to slightly more. But if the political will was there from the government to end the housing crisis, they could easily do compulsory purchase orders on half of these houses.
Absolutely.
But
it's like an executive order. You just say,
you sign it now, it goes through a few pounds, it'll take some time to open up. But the problem is the political will isn't there because the landlords, Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael, are landlord parties. Yes. Instead, we invest close to 1 billion a year in private rented houses for HAP, which is Housing Assistance Payment, or RAS, which was the older one, Rented Accommodation Scheme. But the landlords aren't taking these anymore, so we're left with a massive, I'm not going to say a tsunami of homelessness coming, but there's going to be it's going to be extremely severe, the amount of homeless people coming. And these are people who are working, they just can't get a place to rent. It's not down to other issues. Just at the minute, landlords are selling up.
Right. Well, that goes worldwide, actually. before I go to Jimmy Grady, get ready to sing a song for Gino O'Boyle and my listeners. Jimmy, the young singer here in New York, Jimmy Grady. Actually, he'll be going to Ireland soon for 5-6 weeks. He's winning contests. Speaking of travelling, do you have many issues in Sligo with travellers?
As in traveller families?
Yes.
No, not a bit. I believe the council has been very accommodating the last couple of years for traveller families. The majority of people now, where maybe 30 or 40 years ago they might have been looking for holding sites, they're now looking for homes.
Right.
A lot of them are working in local economies here. There's a few of them who are opening their own business. A lot of them are part of my local football team. It's great to see. There is a few holding sites still around, but the majority of people want homes and holding sites now.
I'm familiar with the history of travellers, believe it or believe it not.
Yeah.
From a lot of good things I have to say about them is, number one, they were always very entrepreneurial.
Yeah.
They were always working. They were known as tinkers because they made tin cans. Before people had a pot to piss in. That's what you pissed in, was a pot made by a tinker, or a milking can for milking a cow, or a saucepan. Now, the dogs, of course, knew them very well, and guard dogs especially would only let them within the distance of a gate to your house, because they might sell you a tin can and steal a bucket. But that's the nature. The reason I mentioned about the travelling aspect of them is, would they vote more than once?
No, I would like to think that everything is fairly strict by the book. Some of them, I know for a fact, don't vote anyways. It's part of them that they mightn't have any interest in it, but you still have to help everybody. In my case, I'm a councillor. It doesn't matter who you vote for.
I know you have to.
I've always been open to helping everybody, but it's just the case that there's actually a traveller support group there as well, and the liaise through them. Things are working a lot better now than they did about 20, 30 years ago.
Okay,
there's a lot more inclusiveness, I think, than there has been. But the only issue I will tell you now is that there are probably too many traveller groups set up that don't get on with each other. You know, like we'd be fine here at STSG is in Sligo Traveller Support Group. They're excellent. But then there's one of the Pavy points. You know, there's Kina for housing. More joined up thinking is what I'd be hoping at some stage along the way for them. But it's only early days for them. And they're excellent.
Well, I'm glad they're making progress on that. And as an atheist, I'm kind of proud to say that my dealings with them always was, number one, they're very religious. If you go to the graveyard, they have the biggest headstones, of course. I remember them climbing. I used to have an establishment in French Park, County Roscommon, and they'd come down every year, especially the Dublin travellers, to climb Croagh Patrick. And some of them would climb it twice for their sins. And I used to say to them, well, go back and climb it again, because you might have more sins than you think. But did you ever climb Croagh Patrick, Gino?
No, I didn't. It's something that I might do, but no more than yourself. I wouldn't be a fairly religious person. My religious beliefs are definitely not something that religion and politics should be mixed with.
You're there in Sligo, you're right beside Benbolden, okay? And Benbolden is known as Table Mountain. And I've been to Cape Town, South Africa, and I climbed Table Mountain, but I never climbed Benbolden. Jimmy's going to sing, and then I'll come back to you, Gino.
No problem at all, John.
Just give him a minute.
By a lonely prison wall, I heard a young girl calling, Michael, they have taken you away, for you stole Trevelyan's corn, so the young might see the morn. Now a prison ship lies waiting in the bay. Low lie the fields of Athenry, where once we watched the small furry birds fly. Our love was on the wing, we had dreams and songs to sing. It's so lonely round the fields of Athenry. By a lonely prison wall, I heard a young man calling, nothing matters, Mary, when you're free. Against the famine, the crown, I rebelled, they cut me down. Now you must raise our child with dignity. Low lie the fields of Athenry, where once we watched the small furry birds fly. Our love was on the wing. We had dreams and songs to sing. It's so lonely round the fields of Athenry. By a lonely harbour wall, she watched the last star falling, as the prison ship sailed out against the sky. For she lived in hope and pray for her love in Botany Bay. It's so lonely round the fields of Athenry. Lie the fields of Athenry, where once we watched the small free birds fly. Our love was on the wing. We had dreams and songs to sing. It's so lonely round the fields of Athenry. It's so lonely round the fields of Athenry.
Okay, thanks to Jimmy Grady there. He's winning awards. He's winning more. He's catching up on Taylor Swift. By the way, Taylor Swift, I believe, is playing in Dublin a lot. And Taylor Swift, Ireland can claim Taylor Swift because she has her roots not in Sligo, but in Derry. She's a Derry girl. Yeah. Well, I did have Charlie McGettigan on here from Drumshanbo for a podcast, and he won the Eurovision Song Contest in 1994.
Oh, very
so
good.
It was a good podcast too. One of my
I
early
actually
ones.
have a cousin on the radio over there. She has her own radio station. I think she's in Jersey, Marion McDonald.
Send me her information.
Yeah, no, it's just, again, just if I can revert back a bit to my dad.
Sure.
My dad was reared in the Nazareth house in Sligo. He never knew any family members. He passed away, and we decided that we'd end up having a look and see what we could find. So we found all his family. His mother actually was working and living in Seattle from 1967 till 2018. She moved back home. We got to meet her. She unfortunately passed away last year. But just with the DNA, there's a lot of them living in New Jersey, which is... I've been in New York myself loads of times and never knew I had any family members at all. So the next time I travel, I know where I'm going.
You'll be more than welcome here in New York City. For my listeners that aren't familiar with what Nazareth House is, Nazareth House is a home for orphaned boys or girls, I assume.
An orphanage.
An orphanage, yeah. So that's something we didn't know about Gino. But, you know, sometimes out of adversity comes greatness. And you should be still very proud of your father, of course.
Oh, we are.
What got you into where you are and doing good deeds for good people? As I said, Liz Taylor is playing in London and in Ireland, sold out, and she is a Derry girl. Now, we have another woman, speaking of women, from Ballina, I believe, and she is a PhD doctor, and she will be the first woman from Mayo, Ballina, to be an astronaut.
I think the first woman from Ireland, is it?
What?
She could be the first woman from Ireland.
She'll be the first woman from Ireland to be an astronaut. Let me get her name, give me a minute here. I'm not good at writing notes because I usually do everything off the cuff. Her name is Dr. Nora Patton.
Yeah.
And she's the next Irish astronaut to go out into space. And there you go with some of that stuff. Now, I want to tell you, have we anything else to cover from Sligo? James Dennison, I know, had a new baby girl. Her name is Molly. And I believe Molly can count up to 20, but she has 10 fingers and 10 toes. And she'll be at the next counting election when is the next general election?
Well, the general election will be October, November, I believe. The next local election will be 5 years' time, thankfully.
Well, you can relax for 5 years.
Although it'll come around fairly quickly, but...
Well, I had Brian Layden on here, and we did an analysis of the European elections and indeed the local elections. And Brian is a man of wisdom. He looks like wisdom anyways. And he said it's all about local issues and local politics. From your point of view, sounds like housing is important and the nursing, the healthcare is important.
Well,
they're pretty much up there.
The thing that affects people is local, because we can ride away to Dublin all we want, but we have a hospital right outside our door that's been underfunded. Like we have actually 2 or 3 young fellas now who are going to be going to the Olympics, who are going to the European Championship. The resources here that's after been put in. I don't know if you've ever heard the name Dermot McDermott. He's an athletes coach. He's one of the best in Ireland. He does everything for free. But if we can start investing in local services, as in extra running tracks, football pitches, stuff for athletes, or even a bigger swimming area for people to go to, a public swimming pool, we would see a lot more people kind of explode on the scene, which would be, it's badly needed, because Ireland is full of athletes, full of natural athletes, which is unusual to see.
Yeah. I had Jerry Coyle on here as well. He's a Mayo County Councillor. Jerry's been around a long time and good friends with Jerry, of course. He was promoting a book. Similar to yourself, he wrote a lot of books about his father. But his father had an expression about Dee Sala in Mayo. I'm more Glenamoy Balmullet.
Yeah.
And his dad said, well, I say too, the scenery in Dee Sala is absolutely beautiful. And a lot of scenery in Sligo is beautiful too. But Jerry Coyle's father said, scenery won't put food on the table,
No.
It doesn't feed a family. It doesn't do. It's lovely when Irish-American relations come back and they go, wow, my God, this place is beautiful. Yeah. Come here in fucking November when it's pissing fucking rain.
Yeah, but there's no point in me going to Switzerland to look at the mountains when I have them outside my door.
Well, I totally agree.
The beautiful sites we have here, Benbulben is lovely. If you're ever back in Sligo again, you could come up to Fort Hill.
I'm wearing magpie colours today.
Yeah, man. We have O'Boyle Park. That's named after my late dad, but it was up in Fort Hill. We have a Gaelic pitch, 2 soccer pitches, a running track, a basketball court. But it's the views of Benbulben, which are second to none.
That's true.
Yeah, I got married. We went up there for the pictures. And it was just one of those things that we all travel to see nice things and nice places, but sometimes we have these things at home and we don't appreciate them as much.
That's true. It's like W.B. Yeats, which is, Sligo's called Yeats County too. It's also called, like my shirt, the Magpies. Yeah. I prefer Yeats County. It has a more poetic story to it,
Yeah.
And indeed, Brian Layden, when he agrees with me, he agrees with me. And when he doesn't agree with me, he goes silent, That's okay. I kind of understand that, with Brian's diplomacy. But I want to tell you a story now, okay? I adopted this, thinking of having someone, a county councillor like yourself, on the show. So let me see your whip here on this one. So this story is about President Putin dies, he goes to hell. Queen Elizabeth dies, she goes to hell. And Simon Harris dies and he goes to hell. So they're all there, and Putin looks over and he sees a red telephone in a corner. And he says to the devil, what's the phone for? And the devil smiles. Devils are good at smiling, by the way. And he said, you can make a phone call back to Earth. So Putin said, I'll call Moscow, the Kremlin. I might be on for 30 minutes. So the devil said, work away, it'll cost you, So Putin is on, he's telling everyone in Moscow, don't tell them I died yet, leave it for a while, the usual Russian propaganda. And anything Donald Trump wants, give it to him, okay? We need Trump to win the American election. And then that phone call is over, and the devil says, that'll cost you 1 million rubles or whatever the currency is. Putin gets out the checkbook, and Queen Elizabeth is next up. And she said, I'd like to call London. I'd like to call Buckingham Palace. I want to check in my boys. So she calls London, Buckingham Palace, and whoever else said, make sure my boys are okay, especially King Charles. I worry about him. I also worry about Prince Andrew. Keep 2 eyes on him, okay? And poor Harry, my grandson, take extra care of him, okay? And the phone call, then she talks more shit. And then the phone call is over and the devil says, that'll cost you £500,000, okay? And the Queen opens her handbag and she's writing. So Simon Harris is up next, okay? And he's allowed to make a phone call. So he decides to call Dáil Éireann in Dublin, and someone answers the phone. I think it's the Minister of Finance. Simon Harris says, you can let them know I'm dead, okay? I'd like a good funeral, a good turnout, Now he says to the finance guy in Dublin, whoever your finance guy is, he said, don't tax shoes, don't tax children's shoes, okay? And you can take the taxes off the water rates, but you can put them on the price of milk, okay? Just switch it over. And then anything else to do with Leitrim and Sligo and Roscommon should be tax exempt, because there's not enough people down there. You need to get more people down there, and we need to get more votes down there, okay? And then he rambles on a bit more, and then the phone call is over, and he says to the devil, how much do I owe you? And the devil says, 50 euros, all right, no bother. And Putin and the Queen says, hang on a minute here now. Putin says, I paid over 1 million rubles. The Queen says, God damn it, she says, I paid £500,000. Why is his bill only €50? And Deliver says, since that fella got in power, all of Ireland has gone to hell. It's a
Yeah,
local.
true
That's a
story.
local.
True
Look, it's a
story,
long
Jim.
story. Yeah, I adopted that. But anyways, how many of you in the county council in Sligo?
We have 18 councillors,
18.
18 altogether. Probably could do with maybe 2 or 3 more. In fairness, there's a lot of work,
Right.
but enjoyable work, so doesn't really
Yes,
bother me.
and another thing that a lot of people might know or be aware of when it comes to politics, I grew up with politics back in Dunamai course. And as a matter of fact, I was a founder member of Young Fine Gael in college in Galway. Myself and 4 lads set it up, and with people like Gareth Fitzgerald, of course, and the Boring Kenny was in to give a talk as well. But in your group of other councillors, like you have probably 2 Sinn Féin people there, you have Fianna Fáil people, and you have Fine Gael people, and you have independents. At the end of the night, when you go out to the local pub, maybe, do you meet, and are you kind of good friends, or are you?
Look, politically, nobody ever gets on different parties. I'm on the left. I'm apparently against Fine Gael, Fianna Fáil. Gareth Fitzgerald was a fellow who was involved in covering up the mother and baby crimes down in Tuam, and maybe Sean Ross Abbey, so I have no time for him either. Outside of politics, you always get to say hello, because at the end of the day, you're not in it for yourself. You're in it for the betterment of Sligo, and there's 18 of us to do our best. And party politics aside, when you're sitting in that seat, you all wear the black and white of Sligo. So
yeah, sure.
We all get on.
Another interesting story I have that maybe not too many people would be familiar with when it comes to, like, say, Mayo in particular, and especially Ballina. We won't wish any bad luck on Simon Harris there. But if you ever need the headstone, Ginty's in Ballina. When they buried the hunger striker in Ballina, was it Michael Gaughan or Frank Stagg? And they insisted they wouldn't allow the Sinn Féin IRA to bury him in the political graveyard, And they paid 2 policemen for 3 or 4 years, so no one would come and dig him up and rebury him. And of course, that had to end. It's a bit like love and war, easy to start, hard to end. And when that ended, of course, the boys, Sinn Féin IRA, came along and they dug him up and reburied him in a political graveyard where he should have been buried in the first place. And the tombstone was put there faster than I could get an Uber car here in New York City, which means about 4 minutes. And that thanks to the Ginty family that do the monuments and headstones in Ballina. And not many people know that story. But the point of it was to do with the wife. And this is interesting for you, Gino, as well. Like, no hurry on getting rid of you either. But when you pass away, your wife will decide what's going to happen to you. If she wants to bury you at the top of Bin Bulbin, that's where you're going to be buried, man.
I was actually the mayor of Sligo at one stage, while I might only be the borough. So when I die, there's actually a route for me to take to go to Sligo Cemetery, which is something I never knew before. It was only in my role as a councillor when one of the late councillors, mayors, had passed away. There's a certain route you have to take. Unfortunately for my wife, she won't be dictating where I go.
That's not necessarily a bad thing either, now,
No, it's all good.
That's like wearing those watches that tell you how many steps you took.
I know.
The last thing you need is another device telling you what to do, okay? So no, your wife does enough. And then the county council chambers, where's the chambers, as they're called?
Ours is in the Riverside building as the main hub, but we also use as a municipal area the town hall, which I think is a great building and should be used more.
Okay.
If you're the mayor of the district, that's your office for the year. So we hold our municipal meetings there, but our main council meetings over the Riverside buildings in Sligo.
Well, great. I don't know if I have anything else to add to our conversation. We talked a lot because it's good to talk. That's the name of the podcast. My guest is Gino O'Boyle. And if you ever come to New York and if you ever want to run for the mayor of New York City, you're well in with a name like Gino. Gino here in New York, he owns a lot of people. So you'll get the Italian vote and the Irish vote.
I've been over it a few times. Again, I've never realised I had family over there till we'd done the DNA test. So now I'm heading to Los Angeles and Las Vegas next month. But my next port of call will be New York after that. I'm a fairly regular visitor to the States anyway.
Well, you'll be more than welcome. Hopefully we'll meet.
I love to see. So thanks very much for having me on, John. It's been a pleasure here, and especially to hear your own story.
I usually go out in my pleasure, man. And people can contact me if they need to contact you, my jhfornews@yahoo.com. I usually sign off in my native language, which is Irish. That's what I grew up with in Glenamoy. thanks to the Queen of England, I speak English. I speak better English now than the Queen of England. And my friends say easily because she's fucking dead.
I was going to say that.
Yeah, there you go. So I say Slán Abhaile, Sin Scéal means that's the story. Agus Spéis Scéala, that means the honor story. And we go out with the European national anthem, which was written back in the 1800s by, I think, Beethoven. So I'm going to say Slán. Thanks for being on the show.
Thank you very much. Slán
Abhaile.